All right, let's dive into this whole TikTok ban thing.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot more to it
Yeah, there is.
than meets the eye, right?
It really is.
Just those data security concerns everyone's talking about.
To really grasp what's going on, we need to zoom out a bit.
Mm.
Like, look at the bigger picture, you know.
Yeah.
Who are the main players here? So we've got TikTok itself, obviously,
Yeah.
and they're owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company.
Right.
Then you got the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And they're the ones voicing all these worries about data security.
Right.
And then, of course, you can't forget about the American tech giants.
Right.
They're probably watching this whole thing very closely, maybe seeing a chance to
Yeah.
grab a piece of the pie.
Right, right. It's like this whole web of governments and corporations
Yes.
all pushing and pulling
Right, yeah.
with their own agendas,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's break it down. The U.S. government's main concern, at least what they're saying,
Mhm.
is that the Chinese government could potentially get their hands on user data
Exactly.
through ByteDance, right?
That's the argument, yeah. Some officials are saying this poses a national security risk.
Yeah?
You know, the Chinese government could collect sensitive information on Americans or even try to sway public opinion.
Right. Okay, so that's the data security side of things.
Mhm.
But the podcast we're looking at today, Between the Headlines,
Yeah.
they have a pretty, let's say, interesting take on all this.
Oh, yeah.
They call it Operation Discount Shopping.
Okay.
And it gets
I like it already.
Operation Discount Shopping. That's catchy.
It is, right.
What are they saying?
So what they're suggesting is that these fears about data security might actually be a tactic
Oh, okay.
to pressure ByteDance into selling TikTok
Interesting.
to an American company, but like at a super low price.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
Right. It's a
Yeah.
pretty heavy accusation.
So what's their evidence? What makes them think that's what's really going on?
Well, they point to the language that's being used in a lot of these discussions about banning TikTok.
There's all this talk about forced sale and American ownership,
Right.
and they're saying that that's not...
It's interesting, isn't it? Because that's not really the usual approach when it comes to national security threats, is it?
It's not the typical playbook.
No, not real.
So walk me through this whole discount shopping thing.
Okay, so
How would that even work?
imagine this. You manage to convince enough people that TikTok is a real threat,
Right.
like a genuine danger. Then you've created this urgent need for a solution. And suddenly, forcing a sale, even if it means TikTok goes for way less than it's actually worth,
Uh-huh.
well, that starts to look like the best option, doesn't it?
So instead of paying full price for a competitor,
Right.
American companies could basically get it on sale
Yeah.
by playing up these security fears.
It's a clever strategy if you think about it.
Yeah.
The podcast hosts actually compared it to wanting your roommate's milk, but telling them it's gone bad.
Oh, I like that.
Good analogy,
It's
right?
a really good analogy.
You get what you want, and it seems like you're doing them a favor.
Right, right. But we should be careful here, right?
Of course.
Of course.
This is all speculation.
Yeah, we have to be cautious. It's important to remember that. But even if this whole discount shopping idea is off base, it does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It raises some interesting questions about, what's really driving all of this.
It really does make you question the whole data security argument.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of data does TikTok actually collect?
Right.
That would be so valuable, you know?
Well, TikTok collects a lot of the same stuff as other social media platforms.
Okay.
Things like your age, your location, your browsing history, what you like, who you interact with. It's basically a gold mine for advertisers and anyone who wants to understand how people behave online.
So let me see if I got this straight.
Yeah.
In theory, the Chinese government could use that data to figure out what makes Americans tick.
Potentially, yes.
And American companies could use it to, and American companies could use that same data to fine-tune their advertising and marketing.
Yeah.
Target people more effectively.
Right, right.
It's all about knowing your audience.
Yeah, it is. It makes this whole situation even frickier
It really does.
because you have these genuine concerns about data privacy, potential misuse.
Absolutely.
But then you also have these economic and geopolitical factors
Yeah.
that could be influencing the decisions being made.
It's a complicated web, that's for sure.
It really is. Like, everyone's looking at TikTok through a different lens.
Yeah.
National security, economic competition, user privacy.
It's all intertwined.
It's a lot to untangle.
It really is. And you know what? It gets even more complex when you consider the history of acquisitions in the tech world.
Oh, you mean like Facebook buying Instagram?
Exactly. There's a perfect example. Remember back in 2012 when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion?
Yeah.
Huge deal at the time.
A lot of people were skeptical.
They were. A lot of people thought Facebook was just trying to eliminate a potential competitor.
And looking back, it seems like a pretty smart move for Facebook, right?
Oh, definitely. Instagram has exploded in popularity,
Yeah.
and Facebook has definitely reaped the benefits of that acquisition.
Right. And that's why this ban then buy theory,
Yeah.
whether or not it's actually true, is so interesting.
It is.
Because it suggests there might be a pattern here, a strategy that could be used, again, with TikTok.
It's a possibility, isn't it?
So what does all of this mean for the average TikTok user?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Are we just pawns?
Are we just caught in the middle of this corporate and governmental chess game?
Yeah.
On the surface, a change in ownership might not seem like a big deal. You might not even notice a difference.
Right.
You'll still be scrolling through dances and funny videos, but underneath,
But behind the scenes,
yeah, behind the scenes, things could be shifting.
yeah,
Your data could be changing hands. The algorithms that control what you see might change.
you're right.
And the whole feel of the platform could be different.
Yeah. It's like we might think we're getting a better, safer experience,
Right.
but really we're just trading one set of problems for another.
It's a possibility.
Mm.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of these things, to understand what a forced sale could actually mean and to think critically about the information we're being given.
Okay, so we've got these two sides of the TikTok ban coin, the legitimate worries about data security,
Yeah.
and then this more speculative idea of a corporate conspiracy.
Right.
But there's another layer to this that we haven't even touched on yet,
Right.
the historical context.
I see where you're going with this.
This isn't the first time a crisis has been used to advance specific agendas.
Oh, absolutely not. History is full of examples where a seemingly urgent situation is used to achieve goals that weren't so obvious at the beginning.
And I think looking at some of those historical parallels
Mm-hmm.
could give us some valuable insight
Yeah, it can help us see patterns.
into what might be happening with TikTok.
Definitely. So are we going to dive into that next?
Let's do it. But first, a quick break.
When we talk about a crisis being used for other purposes, it reminds me of the war on drugs.
Oh, okay. That feels like a pretty big leap. How does that connect to TikTok?
Well, think about how the war on drugs was presented.
Mm-hmm.
It was framed as this massive threat to public safety. And sure, there were real concerns about drug abuse.
Right.
But the way it was handled, the policies that were put into place, they had a lot of unintended consequences.
Like what kind of consequences?
For one, it led to mass incarceration, which disproportionately impacted minority communities. And then you had private prisons. They absolutely boomed, making huge profits off this whole crisis. And let's not forget about the pharmaceutical companies. They saw a golden opportunity to push new treatments,
Right.
some of which turned out to be addictive themselves.
So are you saying that even though the war on drugs might have started with good intentions,
Yeah.
it ended up creating a situation where certain groups benefited in ways that weren't really about solving the original problem?
That's the point.
Yeah.
The public was driven by fear, wanting a quick fix,
Mm-hmm.
and they went along with it. It's a classic example of how a crisis can be used to justify actions that have ulterior motives.
Okay, I'm starting to see the parallel. You're suggesting that the TikTok situation could be similar,
Yeah,
where the concern about data security, which is a valid concern,
it is.
might be used to push through other agendas.
It's about looking beyond the surface.
Like forcing a sale to an American company.
asking who really benefits from the proposed solutions
Yeah.
and considering whether those solutions actually address the root cause.
So let's apply that to TikTok. Hypothetically, if the U.S. government forces ByteDance to sell, would that actually make user data more secure?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right.
It depends on who buys TikTok and what kind of data security practices they implement. An American company might have to follow different regulations
Right.
and be subject to different oversight than a Chinese company. But that doesn't automatically mean better data protection.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of data breaches and privacy scandals involving American tech companies, too.
It happens all the time.
So just changing ownership doesn't magically solve the problem.
It's not a simple fix.
Yeah.
And that's why it's crucial to have a nuanced perspective on this.
Yeah.
It's not as black and white as Chinese ownership bad, American ownership good.
Right. Right.
It's much more complicated than that.
It's about looking at the specifics, the track records of the companies involved, the potential for government influence,
Yeah.
and the broader implications for user privacy and even freedom of expression.
Exactly. And it's also about acknowledging that there are multiple viewpoints on this.
Right.
Some folks might prioritize national security above everything else,
Yeah.
while others might be more worried about corporate control of our data or censorship on the platform.
And depending on your priorities,
Right.
you might see this whole situation very differently.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be aware of your own biases
Mm.
and to consider all sides of the story. Don't just accept the narratives that are being presented to you. Dig deeper. Ask questions.
Mm.
Form your own informed opinion.
Okay, so we've talked about the data security concerns,
have.
the discount shopping theory, and the historical context.
Yeah.
But there's still this big question hanging over everything.
Yeah.
What happens next? What's the future of TikTok?
Well, that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, right? There are a few different ways this could all play out.
Lay it on us. What are the possibilities?
One scenario is that the ban goes through and TikTok is basically shut down in the US.
Wow, okay.
That would be huge. It would have a massive impact on users, creators, and the entire social media landscape.
Yeah, it'd be a major shakeup, especially with how popular TikTok is.
Oh, absolutely, especially among younger people.
Right.
Another possibility is that ByteDance manages to address the U.S. government's concerns somehow.
How could they do that?
Maybe they implement stricter data security measures or allow for more transparency in how they operate.
So basically prove that they can be trusted.
Yeah, something like that.
That would be a big win for TikTok, right?
It would. They'd get to keep operating in the U.S. and avoid being forced to sell.
Right.
But even then, it would raise some new questions like, are those measures actually effective? Do they really protect user data? And would the U.S. government be satisfied with the level of oversight?
So that's two possibilities. A ban or a compromise. What's the third option?
The third scenario is the one we've been discussing all along. A forced sale to an American company
Okay.
that could satisfy the U.S. government's security concerns.
Right.
And it would definitely benefit the American tech giants.
Right, who are looking to expand their reach.
Exactly. It's a win-win for them.
But as we've already discussed, even if TikTok ends up under American ownership, that doesn't mean all the problems around data privacy and potential manipulation just disappear.
You got it. A change in ownership might shift the power dynamics a little.
Yeah.
But those underlying concerns about data collection,
Right.
algorithmic manipulation, and how these platforms influence our lives,
Right.
those issues would still be there.
So no matter what happens with the ban,
Yeah.
it feels like this is a turning point for social media.
I think so too.
It's making us face some uncomfortable truths about how these platforms work and the power they have.
Absolutely. And it's a conversation we need to keep having. Even if this TikTok situation gets resolved, it's bigger than just one app.
It's about the big picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to be asking tough questions about the data ownership, privacy, and what role these platforms should have in our society.
So what can we do as users? How can we navigate this complex landscape and make sure our voices are heard?
That's a great question. And it's one we should definitely explore. But first, I think we need to zoom out even further.
Okay.
This TikTok situation isn't happening in a vacuum. It's part of a much larger trend,
What do you mean?
a global power shift that's changing the entire digital world.
Okay, you were saying that this whole TikTok thing is part of a bigger trend, a global power shift.
Exactly. For years, the internet was like the Wild West of American tech companies. They were the ones calling the shots. But now, Chinese companies like ByteDance are stepping onto the scene. They're becoming major players, challenging that dominance.
So it's not just about TikTok then?
Nope, not at all. It's about a fundamental change in who controls the tech world.
And this is causing some tension, right?
Oh, absolutely. You've got economic tension, political tension.
Yep.
Governments around the world are trying to figure out how to handle these companies,
Yeah.
how to protect their citizens' data and maintain their own kind of technological independence.
It almost sounds like we're entering a new era of digital competition, like a digital Cold War or something.
That's a good way to put it. And just like the original Cold War, this one has implications for everyone, not just the U.S. and China. It affects the technologies we use, the information we have access to, even how we communicate. The whole fabric of our digital lives is being reshaped.
Okay, that's the big picture. But let's bring it back down to earth. What does this mean for us, the users? How do we navigate this increasingly complex and honestly kind of scary digital world?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. We need to understand the forces at play. Who are the players? What are their motivations? What are the potential consequences of their actions?
So do your research, read beyond the headlines, understand the different perspectives.
Exactly. Don't just blindly accept what you're being told.
Be critical.
Yes. The more informed you are, the better choices you can make. Choices that protect your interest and reflect your values.
But it's not just about being informed, right? We can't
Yeah.
just sit back and let these tech giants and governments control everything. We have to take action.
You're absolutely right. We have a voice, and we need to use it. Demand more transparency from these companies, push for stronger data privacy laws, hold our elected officials accountable for the decisions they're making about the digital world.
So write to your representatives, support organizations that are fighting for digital rights, make your voice heard online and offline.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't just about individual action. It's about collective power. When we come together, organize, and advocate for change, we can actually make a difference.
It's like that saying, what unites us is greater than what divides us. We might have different opinions on TikTok, data security, the role of technology in our lives, but I think we can all agree that we want a digital world that's fair, equitable, and respects our fundamental rights.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's a really powerful message to end on. We have the power to shape the future of the internet, but it takes awareness, engagement, and collective action.
So the next time you're scrolling through your TikTok feed, or any social media platform for that matter, remember, you're not just a passive consumer, you're a citizen of the digital world. And your choices matter. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking questions.
And never underestimate the power of curiosity and critical thinking. Those are the tools that will help us navigate this crazy digital world and build a better future for everyone.
Well, folks, that's our deep dive on the TikTok ban and all the bigger issues it brings to light. We covered a lot of ground today, from data security to corporate shenanigans to a global power struggle. Hopefully you're walking away with a better understanding of just how complex this whole situation is, and more importantly, a sense of empowerment. You can make a difference in the digital world.
It's been a pleasure exploring all this with you. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep fighting to the digital world you want to see.